A college student starts a secret affair with his attractive sociology professor, but she has a villainous agenda for the naive man. On a rooftop hideout, Cole meets with his criminal friend TJ, whom he asks if he's ready for their planned house robbery later tonight. That evening, the man tells his accomplice to be the lookout. After opening the door, Cole disarms the security system and informs TJ, through the walkie-talkie, that he's inside. He finds a jewelry box and grabs an antique ring. However, when he sees a picture of an older woman wearing the ring, he places it back in the box. Suddenly, TJ radios that a car is pulling into the driveway, so Cole quickly hides. The couple enters the house, and the wife spots the open back door. The husband presses the police button on the alarm system and readies his weapon. As the criminal runs out of the house, the husband sees him and fires a shot, barely missing the fleeing man. When TJ hears the gunshot and the police sirens, he drives away from the scene. Seconds later, the authorities corner Cole and arrest him. In the police station, Detective Deirdre Clemons, who's aware of Cole's checkered history, expresses her disappointment at seeing him again. The man argues that no one will ever give him a second chance at turning his life around, so the woman mentions a scholarship program for at-risk youth at Valley Spire College. She says that all he has to do is go to school while completing community service and that she's willing to sponsor him. Months later, at the start of the second semester, the man rides his skateboard over to his girlfriend Lindsay's art show. At the gallery, Cole's friend Sean walks around with a camera, asking the women to appear in his video. When the student arrives, his friend asks where he's been, and he says he just came from his shift at the zoo. Seconds later, Lindsay joins them and kisses her boyfriend. She warns Sean to stop pestering her friends to appear in his video and excuses herself to mingle with the guests. Then, the friends spot school dean Dr. John Weller and his wife, sociology professor Kay Weller. After briefly speaking to Lindsay, Kay approaches the men and introduces herself. Sean flirts with the woman and says he'll take her class this semester. Later that night, after Cole and Lindsay make love, she brings up his encounter with the professor and he says he's thinking about taking her class as an elective. She reminds him they agreed to take at least one class together, but he says it's not a big deal, especially since he isn't interested in art. Cole sees that his comment hurt Lindsay's feelings, so he assures that his taking the class won't change anything about their relationship. On the first day of class, Sean cracks a joke that makes the other students laugh, but the sociology professor doesn't find his humor amusing, and she says he's only cracking wise because he wants attention. The embarrassed student stands up to leave after proclaiming that he's dropping the class, but he's shocked when Cole chooses to remain seated. In the dorm room, Sean expresses his disappointment that his friend didn't stick up for him earlier. Annoyed, Cole decides to leave the room to study elsewhere. Outside, while he rides his skateboard, he sees Kay getting in her SUV. Days later, the professor returns Cole's failed essay and tells him to come by her office at 5 p.m. That afternoon, Kay informs the student that she knows he plagiarized his essay. He apologizes, but she's adamant about submitting the issue to the dean's board tomorrow and says she'll likely recommend his expulsion. Cole tries to explain that he's on a scholarship he can't afford to lose, but the woman stands firm. The student chases the teacher out of the building to get her to reconsider, but she walks away. Suddenly, a masked man attacks the professor, and Cole hears her screams. He tackles the assailant, but he gets punched in the process. After the masked man runs away, he asks Kay if she's all right. He offers to take her home, but the woman says to take her back to the office instead. There, Kay's still shaken from the traumatizing event, so Cole assures her that she's safe. As they stand close, she sees the wound on his forehead, and they stare into each other's eyes. Suddenly, she kisses him on the lips, surprising the man. Seconds later, he leans in, and the pair make out until she hears her phone buzzing. Kay answers the call from her husband, who asks if she has their symphony tickets, and she affirms. John says he's coming to the office to pick her up. After the call, the professor tells Cole that he needs to go. While he descends the stairs, he bumps into the husband. Later, while Lindsay paints, Cole enters the room, and she asks what happened to his face. The man lies and says he fell off his skateboard. After they make love, the woman says her dorm is throwing a costume party on Saturday and wants him to be there. The next day, Kay asks to speak to Cole after class. She says she reported the incident to the police but chose not to tell her husband. Then, the professor says what happened between them was wrong and that they should pretend it never occurred. When he assumes he's been expelled, Kay tells him that she never told the dean's board about his plagiarism as her way of thanking him. Cole asks for another chance with the essay, but the teacher says she's already submitted the grades. However, the student says she can consider it extra credit since he wants to learn more about human behavior under her tutelage. So, the professor assigns him a 20-page essay before the end of the semester. On Saturday, Cole and Sean attend a costume party. Lindsay catches Sean with a camera and confiscates it. Then, she speaks to Cole and expresses her disappointment that he isn't wearing a costume. Annoyed, the boyfriend says he stayed up all night working on a paper and didn't have time to prepare, so the woman walks away. Sean calls him out for failing to understand Lindsay's disappointment. He decides to leave the party because he feels like his girlfriend and roommate are ganging up on him. On his way out, Cole bumps into Gil, who takes offense and throws a punch. The man dodges the swing and knocks Gil down. Later, the student receives a message from Kay telling him to come to her office immediately. There, Cole asks how she got his number, and she says she got it from administration. Suddenly, the pair kiss despite Kay's full awareness that their actions are wrong. Moments later, she sees the security guard approaching the door and tells Cole to hide under her desk. The next day, he drops by the police station for his scheduled meeting with Deirdre. Cole shares how he sometimes feels like he's catching up to the other students, and the cop explains that it's natural since he lost years to his life of crime on the streets. She tells him to keep going, and he says he will. That afternoon, Cole leaves Lindsay a phone message apologizing for last night and says he's looking forward to her art show this weekend. Seconds later, he receives a call from Lexi, who tells him to come to a specific address that night. That evening, he realizes the address is a gentleman's club and is surprised when he sees Kay there. The teacher says he's there to learn about human behavior in the real world, and points out how all the men are under the women's control. Then, she leads him to the VIP section for an exercise. The professor introduces him to Lexi and says the dancer is about to teach him about control. While Lexi gives him a lap dance, she instructs him to keep his hands to himself no matter how much he wants to touch her. Suddenly, his phone rings with a call from Lindsay. However, the dancer playfully takes his phone and ends the call. Irritated, Cole tells the woman to stop and then leaves the bar. In the dorm room, Sean tells him to take a shower because he smells like the gentleman's club. In class, the professor hands back the student's homework, and when Cole opens the folder, he sees that she's slipped in her undergarment. That afternoon, the student drops by the teacher's office to ask what last night was for, and she says it was his midterm exam, which he passed. That evening, Cole stops by Lindsay's art show. Suddenly, he receives a text message from Kay telling him to come to room 106A. Inside, the professor opens her coat to reveal that she only has undergarments on, and the pair makes love. After the deed, the student returns to the art show, and Lindsay says he barely saw him all night. She tells him that she thought they had a genuine connection, and he agrees but says they shouldn't feel so tied down, especially since they're in college. Convinced he considers her as just another conquest, the woman slaps him. In the dorm room, Cole tells Sean that he's seeing an older woman behind Lindsay's back. The roommate says that he knows the man loves his girlfriend and has to choose between the two. The next day, the student drops by Kay's office and sees the bruise on her face. She says she came home late last night, and her husband hit her. Furious, Cole wishes to retaliate and says he'll kill John, but the professor calms him down. She thinks her husband suspects she's cheating and tells the student it's best if they end the affair. However, Cole says he can't just forget about his feelings for her. He asks what John told her to tell others about the bruise, and Kay says she's told people she got it during a tennis lesson. The student begs her to leave John if he hurts her, but the woman says it isn't that simple, especially since he's the school's dean. Cole says he'll do anything to save her from John. So, Kay says her husband keeps money in a safe behind a wall in his study. She adds that John collected the cash from taking bribes from parents who want their children to get into the school. The man says he can steal the money for her if he knows where the safe is. The next evening, Cole attends a dinner party at the Wellers' home, and the school's head of campus security and former cop, Chief Udall, eyes him. The student heads upstairs and enters the dean's study. He sees a framed picture on the wall and is about to check if the safe's behind it when Udall appears and asks what he's doing there. Cole lies and says he was looking for the bathroom, and the former cop remarks that he looks familiar. Suddenly, Kay interrupts and says she'll take the student to the bathroom. Later, Cole subtly tells the professor that he figured out where the safe is and leaves the party. The next day, in a hotel room, the student asks if the safe is behind the picture on the wall, and she affirms. He admits that he used to break into people's homes and knows he'll be able to steal the money for her. Apprehensive, Kay doesn't think it's a good idea, but Cole promises he can do it as long as she tells him all the security details of their home. The professor says they have an alarm system that'll have to be disarmed in 30 seconds, or else campus security is alerted. When he asks if there are any security cameras, she says no. He suggests doing the burglary on Saturday because she'll have a work trip in Santa Rosa, giving her the perfect alibi. Then, he says they'll meet in the hotel on Sunday with their packed bags so they can run away together. Despite her worries, Kay agrees, and Cole says he loves her. Instead of saying it back, she pulls him in for a kiss. On Saturday night, the student breaks into the home and disarms the alarm system. Then, he heads upstairs and peeks into the bedroom, where he sees John sleeping. So, he makes his way to the study. To his surprise, there is no safe behind the framed picture. Suddenly, the alarm blares, prompting the man to flee. Seconds later, Udall and campus security arrive at the house. Cole runs into Gil and his friend, who wish to retaliate for what happened at the costume party. Fortunately, the student fights them off and runs away just as security guards arrive. In the hotel room, he leaves Kay a message about how there was no safe behind the framed picture. Then, he places his phone on the sink and splashes water on his face. While staring in the mirror, he wonders why the professor lied to him about the safe's location. Cole sits on the bed and turns the TV on. To his shock, a news report airs of John Weller's demise from smothering and that he's the prime suspect after the home security cameras show him fleeing the scene. Minutes later, the hotel manager opens the room under the cops' orders, but Cole slips out the window and down the fire escape. The following day, the student takes refuge in the rooftop hideout. He remembers Kay telling him that there were no security cameras in her home and realizes that John was probably already dead when he saw him in bed. Later, he calls Deirdre from a payphone to explain himself. However, the cop says Kay called them after seeing his face on the news. She told the police that the student harassed her for weeks. The professor also gave them her blouse with his blood on it, claiming he attacked her. Cole tries to explain that they planned the robbery together, and his blood was on her blouse because he saved her from an attacker. Nonetheless, the detective finds it hard to believe his story and encourages the student to give himself up. The man returns to the rooftop, where TJ attacks him to collect the reward money for his capture. Cole manages to fight him off, and then he takes the man's jacket and car keys. Minutes later, he drives TJ's car to the gentleman's club to ask Lexi to help prove that he and Kay know each other. However, the dancer pretends she doesn't know what he's talking about. When Cole continues pestering the woman, a bouncer appears and chases him off. In the car, the student wonders how campus security responded quickly to the alarm. In the library, Cole speaks to Sean and says he didn't kill the dean. The friend believes him and says that nobody knows where Kay is. Before they go their separate ways, the roommate gives him some money and his sunglasses. In the parking lot, Cole sees Udall get into Kay's SUV, and he decides to tail him. The head of campus security pulls into a driveway, so the student sneaks into the house's backyard. There, he sees Kay kiss Udall, revealing they've been having an affair. So, he records the couple's interaction using Sean's camera. Cole learns that Udall killed John 20 minutes before the burglary to frame the student for the death and that Kay plans to collect the insurance and trust money from her husband's demise. The couple also plan on taking John's plane to Mexico to run away together. While Cole sneaks into the professor's SUV, Udall apologizes for hitting the woman's face, causing the bruise. However, she says it's okay since it was part of the plan. Eventually, the pair load their bags into the vehicle, unaware they've got a stowaway who continues to record from the back seat. At the airport, Kay catches the student sneaking up on them, so Udall points his gun at him. Cole hides behind barrels and tries to get the other man to realize that the professor used them to do her dirty work. Suddenly, Kay knocks down the armed man with a wrench, allowing the student to grab the gun. Seconds later, Deirdre arrives and points a gun at Cole. She reveals that she and Kay are lovers and have been behind everything since the beginning. The cop says she told Lexi to keep her mouth shut unless she wants to go to jail for illegal substance use and that the attacker on campus was the bouncer at the gentleman's club. Deirdre says they kept the blouse with his blood on it as insurance since they only wanted the student to end up in jail. However, now that he knows the truth, he'll have to die along with Udall. When the cop's about to shoot the head of campus security, she's unaware that the man has another concealed pistol, and they shoot each other. Cole grabs Deirdre's gun and handcuffs. Kay threatens to shoot him, but she doesn't know he switched the safety on when he surrendered it to the cop earlier. So, the student grabs the weapon and points it at the professor. She offers him $4 million and the chance to run away together. Cole kisses the woman passionately but secretly places the handcuffs on her wrists. The professor tells him that no one is going to believe his story, so he reveals the camera and shows her that he recorded everything she said. Days later, the newspaper headlines clear the student of the crimes. In the dorm room, Cole finishes the essay he promised the professor at the beginning of the semester. Sean thinks they should use his story for money and fame, amusing his friend with the suggestion. Later, he drops the envelope with the essay in a mailbox, and then he and Lindsay walk to class together. Eventually, Kay receives the student's extra credit essay in prison.